Welcome to Finding the Frame. I'm your host, Chris Haigh, and joining me today are two of the team behind Tribeca award-winning feature film Good Girl Jane, writer and director Sarah Elizabeth Mintz, and cinematographer Jake Sainer. Let's get into it. Guys, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much, Chris.
So first of all, I really wanted to get started on how you guys came together, how you collaborated, how you began collaborating and everything like that, because it's lightning in a bottle when you come together. So how did it begin? How did that start?
We were literally just talking about this as we walked up to the building. Jake, how did this?
We both went to NYU, and in our intermediate narrative class, we had to crew up at the beginning of the year in crews of 4 to make films together. And I was just thinking in the parking lot. So for some reason, I got up the courage. I had never met Sarah before, but I just saw her at the front of the classroom, and for some reason I got up the courage.
Alone,
and
I was alone.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Naturally.
sitting alone. I just somehow got up the courage to just go up and ask, "Oh, do you want to be in a crew with me and this other guy?" And yeah, that's how it started. And then that was how many years ago? 12?
It was 12
13?
years,
Yeah.
Would you say that you've then developed as artists yourselves? Like you've both kind of helped each other to sort of grow into the artist that you've become?
Definitely.
Yeah. What did you work on to begin with? Like short films and things like that, thesis films, or what was it?
Yeah, we shot Sarah's intermediate film together in school, and her thesis film as well with Dakota Johnson called Transit, which was an amazing experience and kind of our first real intense collaboration.
I mean, my first directing ever was with Jake. Jake and I were working together through all of college. So yeah, my first 2 short films that I did in college, I did with Jake, and then we did another short film, which was a proof for the feature that we ended up making together, and we did that together as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were working with Dakota Johnson, what's that like? Because was she already an artist in her own right at that point, and she already been recognized and things? What was that like?
You know what's so funny? So we were in, we were at NYU together. I was in this class. It's called Advanced Narrative, and you had to pitch to the class what you wanted to do with your film, and then the school would pay for your insurance and give you a little money to make the movie. But not everyone got to get that insurance and that money. You had to pitch to get the allotment. And I remember pitching Dakota, being like, there's this actress that she was in a scene of The Social Network. I don't know if you've seen it. And I was pitching her to the class, trying to get them to vote for me. So she was working, and she was, I think, shooting a show called Ben and Kate, which was a comedy at the time that she was in. But we knew each other from when we were younger. I knew Dakota from growing up in Los Angeles, and I asked her to do the movie with me, and I kind of had an inkling that I wasn't gonna have that much more time to just ask her to go hang out and shoot something with me, because she was starting to work, and I knew she was incredibly ambitious. But luckily she wanted to do it with us, and it was not that quick either. I think that
long shoot. I think 6 or 7 days.
Yeah, the 7-day shoot for that short film was quite long, but it was a short film, and it was an 8-day shoot. Yeah. So 7-day shoot. Yeah.
And then how did you then get Jake involved in Good Girl Jane then? How did that move on?
Man, I don't remember entirely the first conversation we had about Jane.
I definitely read some drafts 8 years ago at least, or more, with a different title.
I was assisting directors for a while when I was living in New York after college, and I wrote a draft around 2014, 2015, and I must have just sent it to Jake to be at some point I want to do this. And then as soon as the short started taking shape, can you clear this up for me? So I sent the script through one of the Sundance Writers Intensive in like 2017-ish. Were we already making the feature together at that point, or we were just planning to do the short?
I don't think we had talked about the feature yet. I mean, yeah.
It's just been so long now. I'm like, we've been doing this for 10 years.
No, I don't think I had read a full feature script when we shot the short.
Okay.
Because I think that would have informed a lot of stuff of the backstory. But
So just to clear that up
yeah.
then, so you guys, you started shooting a short, you shot a short version of Good Girl Jane first, right? And that was like your sort of concept piece, a little bit like, I don't know, Damien Chazelle did with Whiplash. Sort of shot this short concept piece, and then we're like, let's get people on board for a feature length.
Exactly. I think very similar to that in that the feature version already existed in my mind, and in fact, I had written it because I went through the Writers Intensive at Sundance, and they gave me a little bit of money, like an artist grant, and I used that money to make the short so that I was just trying to show people that I could direct a movie. So I worked with the same producer and the same cinematographer on that short as I did on the feature.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then basically from there, you made it into this feature film. You got backers on board, and
What a process.
One of the things that I read about you actually was that you initially wrote this for the Sundance Fellowship, and then rewrote the whole thing again. Click delete and then restarted it. Why was that? What was the reasoning behind that?
Did you totally start fresh like that?
Essentially.
Yeah.
I so I'd written a script called Junk Food Diary.
Okay.
And it was like top to bottom voiceover. It was very punchy. It was very like cut to match cut. Like it was like a ride, and it didn't really do anything I wanted it to do, but it was a pretty fun read, and I got a lot of feedback at the Sundance program. They were just sort of like, what are like the mentors that I was sitting with were just sort of like, this is good, but like, what are you trying to say? And like, maybe look a little deeper. They were tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did sort of hit delete, and I think the first thing that I did was the short. Okay. I was like, okay, well, maybe I'd try something a little more textural and a little more. I mean, that movie's all oneers, so it was very not like cut to jump cut. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that Sundance program, it was quick. It was only, I think, like 3 days.
Okay.
Yeah, but it definitely had an impact because I tossed the script out and then tried to do this weird thing with the short, which ended up being different, but much more in the direction of where the feature ended up going.
You said on that it was pretty much all one shots or long shots like that. That's arguably what is going on now in the film, in the feature itself. Yeah. How did you deal with that? How did you deal with that, Jake? Sorry.
I mean, it was a really fun challenge. Honestly, I love constraint, because I think that honestly, when we have our rule behind the short as well as the feature was to cut as little as possible and try to make all these things play out in very long handheld oneers. And I love constraints. I love a framework that has rules. Yeah, thank you. No, because I do think honestly, when you remove options, sometimes it allows you to go deeper into a moment. I mean, it was really inspiring to work in that way, and it just definitely not a normal way to design a film, and gave us a lot of challenges, but yeah.
Would you prefer it to be like that though? Would you prefer it to be these long takes where you can kind of find the frame?
I mean,
to say the name of the podcast in there, but yeah. Do you find that that's better for you?
I don't know that I am gonna prefer it forever. I think that both of us really wanted to explore that as a way of storytelling at the time, and it also just gave us it gave us this immediacy with everything, with the actors and the camera and the entire production team as well, to just kind of be able to focus very intently on the scene rather than all of the normal coverage aspects. And I think even within the amount of time we had to make the film, we had 21 shoot days.
Wow.
And 40-something locations, if not more.
Yeah, if not more.
Something about having this kind of concise, like, okay, we just focus on the take, we focus on the camera work and the performances, and once we get that completed, then we can move on. Once we feel good, then we can move on. I think that honestly allowed us to be able to make this film like this, because we didn't have to go in for pickups and coverage and everything.
How do you pitch that as a director? Are you sort of sitting down with your actors and you're talking them through all the emotions and everything that you want to hit within these, like a 6-minute long take at one point? There was one which was amazing, by the way. But how do you pitch that as a director? How do you direct people, I suppose, that are underneath you?
I found out last night at the Q&A with Patrick Gibson that I hadn't told. I thought I told them earlier in the process, but I guess I didn't tell the actors till later in the process that we weren't shooting coverage. It was. That's a ridiculous thing for me to do. Not do that again. I a lot of it was rehearsing with camera. So it was very much like a play. Like they knew the dialogue. We would have, loads of conversations about their character, and it wasn't so much like hit this. They would do the scene with the camera rehearsal, and then we would do the scene once, and then I would go in and then I would sort of like
tweak it.
Yeah, exactly, shape it a little bit. But I try not to shape too much heading in, because I do want to see what these actors choose to do instinctively. I mean, they were cast for a reason, and they were intimately connected to the material and the characters, so I like to see what they do first. But we did a lot of it. It was like really Jake and I did so much of the rehearsing. We blocked, even though it is long one-ers and he is finding the frame in many moments, we shot listed that movie like so intensely for genuinely years on end. And knowing what the camera was going to do and having the freedom. I think the actors were able to have the freedom because they knew it wasn't a free-for-all. It was like, because there was structure within the one-ers, I think there was more freedom. Yeah, because of the map. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what I think that's what got actually the most out of Rain and out of Patrick? They were able to you could see that they had this freedom to kind of move. And also, I'd say there were certain shots within this film where it's actually really quite nice. It's almost voyeuristic that we sort of move in on them. This scene happening, you know what I mean? I really feel like that's if that's what the intention was.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I don't know if it's I think it does have a slightly voyeuristic effect, and also but the ideal is when you just kind of, the times when you forget that there's a camera there, and that, I mean, I'm obviously right up with them in this kind of a space, and I think developing a relationship with Patrick and Rain especially, for me, was very crucial in just being able to like kind of just let myself disappear as much as possible and allow them to work, and forget about me. I do think we did have a lot of like specific blocking, definitely, because there's a lot of logistics in how to cover a scene in one shot.
Yeah, we did.
But I don't ever feel like remembering the blocking being something that was intrusive in a way. I mean, there's some scenes that I guess had to.
No, it wasn't. There wasn't a lot of like you must hit here. It was. It's kind of like.
Maybe more blocking for me, honestly,
so,
than them. Yeah.
It was much more blocking for Jake and making sure that we didn't interfere with what the actors needed to do.
I get you.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we're jumping ahead a little bit, but obviously, like the motel is a lot of a dance. The motel scene.
Yeah.
That's a lot of movement for Jake in a really small space with a lot of actors, and there's a lot of energy, and that was mostly camera blocking and not so much performance rehearsals, because we just wanted to.
Yeah,
just to bring people up to speed on that. So the whole film itself, Good Girl Jane, is about a young teenage girl who, through isolation and loneliness, jump in if I say something wrong, but through isolation and loneliness, she falls in with a crowd of people who are doing drugs, and a drug dealer who's a bit older than her, and effectively it turns out that she's being groomed, I suppose you would say, but it's mainly because she doesn't have a good relationship with her mother. She doesn't really have much time with her dad because her dad and her mum are divorced, and her sister and her don't really have a relationship either. So she's, through this isolation and this loneliness, she falls in with this crowd. She starts doing drugs. She becomes addicted to these drugs, and then she starts a relationship with this drug dealer. So at this point, they're in this motel room, and they have this very intimate scene, don't they? That's in a bathtub. That's amazing. You've got all these gorgeous sort of fuzzy, I suppose, very slow motion frames, and it goes directly from that. I'm not sure if there's a cut in there, but directly from that into like an attack scene. There's people fighting. There's lots of things like that going on, and then they shoot out into the street and stuff like that. Is that correct? So that's where we're up to.
Yeah.
And that was all choreographed, I suppose, because there were so many actors within this shot, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, because of the oneers, I'll start with the bathtub scene, because that's, I mean, I love to talk about that scene, because that was a chance for, because the whole film is comprised of these long oneers and very choreographed takes, and in a way there's a lot of room to play, but also in a way that you can't, like, camera-wise, there's not so much as much flexibility of just like, oh, let me find this frame up here and this frame up here, down here.
Also, that bathtub that bathroom is
so
like the size
small.
of the couch.
Tiny.
That was just, it was one of those scenes that like was super special, because it's supposed to have a very surreal feeling to it, and one of the chances for Sarah and I to just let things play out without any rehearsal with anything, and just kind of allow us to float together. So that scene, and it's a slow motion scene as well, which is the only one in our film and one of the only edited scenes in the film.
There are a lot of shots in that scene as opposed to the other scenes, which are one shot. And
also Sarah had this script note of the peach colored glow in the bathroom that was just always there from the first draft, and that was really fun to play with lighting wise, and kind of was definitely the inspiration for that whole motel, or a big pivot point for the whole motel color palette. So from that slow motion, very intimate scene, there are some cuts in there that kind of fit into that montage moment, and at the beginning of the last shot of that, the end of the last shot of that sequence, Patrick is, another character comes in through the bathroom door and just physically grabs Patrick and pulls him out of the tub, and then the camera, which starts in the bathtub, just follows him out, and this whole fight ensues. And for that scene, especially because there's so many characters and so much action happening, we really just, like a lot of scenes Sarah and I would choreograph with diagrams and very meticulously figure out how to get camera from A to B. This scene we went in with our entire cast at the beginning of the day, and we're just like, let's do this together, and we all just played it out, and I watched a bunch of times of cast just experimenting with what they want to do, and then we kind of put some loose blocking into place. But
I remember being really nervous, because I had a vision and an idea of what I wanted the energy to feel like in that room, and I had written it where you were definitely like bouncing from anxious moment and like outburst to outburst, but I didn't know what to tell the actors specifically to do with their movements, because I really wanted to know, like, when the punch happened, like, where do you want to, does Jamie want to like bolt into the corner, or does he want to like run across the room? I wanted to see what his instinct was to do. And it was just such a maze in there. And anyway, we found it together, like genuinely. I didn't go in there and like tell them exactly where to stand. And then we like built it. Throughout that.
And we had two boom operators as well in that room behind me the whole time. It was just, it was a really fun, I mean, by that point as well, that was the end of our first period of shooting, which we can also talk about. But
I was also thinking right now, I was like, we also had an intimacy coordinator that was helping us with that scene, because there was some nudity in the scene, and then there was a fight coordinator.
Yeah, there was a stunt coordinator as well.
Coordinator, and there were just so many elements, and the two boom ops.
All in one motel room.
Yeah, it was just like a tiny little room, and it's pretty wild the amount of people that collaborated for that to work.
It really worked. I like the fact that it went from this really slow motion and very close and intimate. I mean, one of the things I was actually saying to these guys before, podcast watchers, then we've got two people working here, so I was talking to them. But one of the things I was saying to these guys before is the shots that are with Jamie and Jane together, even though we know that they're kind of taboo and they're wrong, they're very beautifully shot. It's so intimate. You know what I mean? And it's something that I don't feel like Jane as a character really experienced in any other capacity until she was with Jamie. Like, there's another shot where they have another intimate moment that's in a car, and you're trying to think, where's the camera here? Because she sits on his lap at one point. I'm not giving everything away here, but sits on his lap at one point. You're in the back, then you get in the front. Like, I was thinking, how's the camera moving here? You know what I mean? How are we keeping this going?
About
Yeah.
this. Yeah, we were just talking about this in the drive over.
That scene is that's a special scene for me. I think that was just that was also towards the end of our shoot, and yeah, those guys just really were really in it together, and just really, I don't know, they could. All of us could, and Sarah as well was in the back, the trunk of the car, I think, and I was in the front and kind of weaving around. I don't know. We just had a really intimate environment and a closed set for that, and yeah, it's just a lot of trust.
Euphoric? Sorry to interrupt you. Is there something euphoric about the kind of freedom that you get there as a cinematographer? It's something that you might not get in different film sets under a different director or with a different group of people. There's something kind of
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, when it feels so feels so real, when the actors are bringing such deep authenticity to it, there's some sort of release from a camera perspective where it's just following and feeling, and you kind of just all click into a certain space together. And
what tool what tool are you using there? What's the camera? You've scaled it all down.
So for that scene, we had that sex scene starts driving. It starts as a driving shot, which we have. Basically, an easy rig is attached to the roof of the car, and the string is dropped down through the sunroof, and then I'm inside the car in the front seat for that. We have a pre-lit parking spot where Rain has to hit a driving mark in order to
drive while
a driving mark while she's acting. She has to hit a mark while driving, and then go into this. And then they both she's on his lap, she's driving while sitting on his lap.
Yeah.
Then they kind of tumble into the back seat together, and we kind of just all flow with it like that. That was a scene, honestly, that a lot of the things we could do diagram wise, but this scene we actually had some of our friends. It was actually my gaffer and his partner at the time, who we
went and did like doubles rehearsals.
We blocked that one out because we know it was a very complicated negotiation of where camera could be and how to make it look like it's effortlessly tumbling into the backseat. Because I think that was even how it was written. They tumble into the backseat, something like that. So that was a scene that we really blocked very intentionally with camera in the actual car, like a few days before the shot, and
They're
we
sort
just
of like
kind of
kissing and undressing and moving from the front seat to the back seat at the same time, and somehow Jake was just a part of that as well.
It feels great.
Special.
One of the things that you talk about in another interview, Sarah, is you talk about the not wanting to over-rehearse the cast. I mean, you even talked about it in this one, I think, but not wanting to over-rehearse the cast. But that's not the same for you guys. It seems like you guys rehearsed and practiced all these shots and stuff like that to make sure that you were kind of in the right headspace for when you plonk these actors within the shot. Is that correct?
I would say, yeah, I rehearsed a lot more with Jake, and I did a lot of talking with the actors, which is a process that I've seen myself engage with in other projects too. It's sort of like I really write from a place of character, and these things I'm not building really high concept universes or worlds at the moment. And so it's really about character and human interaction and character interaction. And so if the actors really grasp the character and connect with the journey that character goes on in the moment that the character is in, then like I don't need to, even the dialogue's flexible. Like everything is written and everything, there is a structure, like I said, and a map for everything. And then once we're present in those like human moments, I really do like to just find what is natural to the actors, because in that moment, like the actor is present as that person. And if it veers too far off, I trust myself to shape it back into where we need to be. But we did so much of the rehearsing together.
I mean,
so that they could, like I said,
totally
could work that way.
So they've got the freedom, Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's when the shots are so complicated and it's all handheld work, and I have to, there's a lot of marks for me to hit. For me, it's like, oh, I'm like having this vision of this choreography, camera choreography, but that also takes execution as well. So I think it was very important for me to rehearse that, because once they got onto set, and if it's a complicated 5-minute shot, like they might have their best performance the first take. And if it's the best performance, that's the take that Sarah's going to use in the cut. Like that is the priority of the film, and that's why this film has such an authentic energy.
It's a lot of pressure on Jake.
So I had to rehearse enough so I knew that I could make a usable first take. Because for me, even, I mean, this was also something I learned, really deeply learned on this film, is kind of letting go of this sort of cinematography based camera movement perfectionism, and being able to release into just feeling these things out and allowing for there to be what I would consider mistakes and what I would consider something that was that didn't align with exactly how I envisioned it, because that wasn't the priority. So rehearsals were important, but also just releasing and being like, okay, there is some looseness in this way of shooting, and the take that I might love for camera that just has all these perfect little moves is probably not going to be the one that's in line with the actors. And sometimes it is, and that's the magic, the most magical moments. But sometimes I just had to release to the energy of the entire film.
Because you're shooting handheld,
Yeah.
like there's something that Shane, who's from Filmmakers Academy, Shane talks about this. He frames it in 5K and shoots in 4K, so that way he's got that kind of headroom to be. Is that something that you were employing, or were you just like, it doesn't matter if I lose him a little bit? Or
No,
like that?
yeah, we didn't. I mean, I totally respect and understand that mentality. I think that for me, I just wanted, we needed the intuitive control of composition, because there were so many other variables that it does make sense, and it could have been an option for this, but there's something about doing it live that is like that is in the theme of this, in the spirit of this film. But
was it always intended to be handheld? Was that always you weren't ever thinking Steadicam or anything like that? It was always going to be handheld.
I don't think we ever talked about Steadicam.
It was always meant to be handheld, and I think we were talking about this before the cameras were rolling, was that Jake went on like a full upper body regimen to be able to hold this camera for the length of production, and then the movie shut down for a year, and then you had to try to get back into that same
after the first
regimen.
After the first year of shooting, my left shoulder was totally messed up, and I could barely lift my arm. And then I spent that whole year kind of just trying to rehab, and suddenly, right before we started shooting, my body was just like, okay, we're gonna let you have access to your mobility for this. And then we just powered through that whole shoot and had no problems during the shoot. But then at the end of that second period of shooting, my right shoulder was totally messed up. And I mean, I really learned how to take care of my body in order to do this kind of work since then, and through that experience, honestly.
He has developed quite the yoga habit.
Yeah, it's yoga for me.
So, Sarah, come back to you. With regard to your directorial vision, I suppose, or your process or anything like this, you talked earlier on about how you were an assistant to a few directors. I've got it written down here. We've got Alejandro Inarritu and Joachim Trier and Kerry Fukunaga. What did you take from them, from when you were working with them, and put it into your process? Or was there anything? Was it something different to that? Sorry for the tough question.
No. I've thought a lot about it, honestly, and then I've thought a lot about it. All of those directors have very specific visions. They're all artists, and they're, I would say, pretty uncompromising with their visions. And I really can't believe that. I mean, it really was sort of like, I went to film school, but I feel like that was film school for me, was being on sets with those filmmakers. I learned ways that I want to interact with my cast and crew, ways I don't want to. I kind of got to see, I think, what was the most inspiring and what was the most motivating way to engage with your actors. I watched rigorous casting processes. I also with Joachim got to see how European director approached his work, and that was Joachim's. I worked with Joachim on his first English language film, which is pretty incredible. And it, I don't know. I mean, I was inspired by all of them. There were also a lot of long shots on The Revenant, which was the film that I worked on with Alejandro, which we were really inspired by Chivo when we were designing this movie.
Lighting.
Yeah, we did a lot of practice. I mean, it's a lot of natural lighting and practical lights on this film, and so yeah. I mean, I guess I took little things from all of the projects that I assisted on, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I will continue to see as I make work. I will continue to see ways that those years touched the way that I approach my own work.
Yeah. And so in terms of the European, it was a lot more long takes than, say, out here in America, whereas a lot more in terms of the...
You know what? With... Well, Alejandro's Mexican. I mean, I don't know. That approach... That was a huge, gigantic movie, but it was definitely an art film, and it was so inspiring for me to see that much money spent on art. I gotta say, that was pretty remarkable. And there were only like 4 hours of light during some of those days of shooting, so that was pretty wild. And the attention to detail, all of those directors had such exquisite attention to detail, which is pretty fantastic and pretty incredible, and something that like it does feel like a luxury and a privilege to get to have, but is something that I now feel like really there's a lot of value in putting that time in. Yeah, but that was, and I would say that's a lot of what I saw in working with Joachim on Louder Than Bombs, was just like so much attention to detail, and his relationship with his cinematographer at the time. They'd been working together since school, and that was inspiring for me. Yeah, great movie.
I suppose that going back to that first question that I asked, it's about that relationship and that collaboration, right? There's something that you say, Jake, in things I was reading about, and it was this idea of sharing an understanding of the world that you create. Like everybody seems to have a kind of part in this vision for something that you're creating. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, Sarah also her familiarity with this world as well is hugely essential, but also she just created an environment that just was very caring and welcoming, in which we could all kind of express and explore. I mean, in a meaningful way. I think that's super essential. I think we're able to, through filmmaking, able to capture a space. I mean, that's what we do, and I think creating that space on set, especially with a film that is largely like a play or like a documentary where the things are playing out in real time. I think creating an actual space that feels like what you're trying to portray is crucial. And Sarah was really amazing about that, and inspired that in all of our team. Like, even from a production standpoint, we had just there was great care put into the energy of the set, and that wasn't an afterthought. It wasn't just something that happened. Like, our producer Lauren Pratt as well, like had just a great deal of respect for the tone of the creative environment, and that was, I mean, one of the biggest things about this film is that you were able to create a tone that supported everyone to be vulnerable and express themselves. So
this is something that you've been involved in before as well, Jake. I mean, you've done a lot of human stories, I suppose. You know, like some of your fashion films are really cool. But I was really looking at
That's so true.
Yeah, they're amazing, like beautiful. If you want to look at Jake Sanna's website, he's got some really cool fashion films on there. But the ones that I really like was Refuge and After Migration and Bravo Burkina. These are like, well, a lot of them are about refugees. And whereas a lot of films would focus on sort of the plight of the refugees and outside it, you really kind of lift them into a regal and you know, they're very beautiful films.
Thank
you know,
you.
I'm thinking about the shots, and we can put these up while we're interviewing, but shots of like the life jackets and kids climbing on top of all these life jackets, things like that are just, incredibly beautiful films. What draw you to those films? What is it that makes you want to make films like that?
That's the most inspiring moments are when I'm in a space being able to share a moment with another human, and the interaction between the camera and the subject is really beautiful. And there are moments when it just when you can feel someone's vulnerability and you can click into something together. I think that the refugee stories, Wale Oyajide, one of my dear collaborators, who co-directed After Migration with me and directed Bravo Burkina, another film that I shot. He just was very interested in showing the heart of people, and I think that's what I'm drawn to as well, and it's something that Sarah is equally just dedicated to, is exploring that heart. And visually, that's just what inspires me. That's when I feel like it's working. When I feel it's working is when I can feel the emotion behind what's happening.
Yeah, does that come from your past? I know that your parents are like a printmaker and a performance artist.
Yeah.
Is that something that kind of propelled you into this life as a cinematographer and director in your own right
Perhaps
as well?
Yeah. Yeah,
I love that question.
My past has had a huge impact on who I am as an artist. My parents are both artists, a printmaker and artist bookmakers. My mom and my dad's a performance artist and a sculptor and a carpenter. And they when I was 3, they bought property with 2 other families, and I am an only child, but I grew up with 5 kids total in one yard. And I think the community aspect and the security within community and people and caregivers and friends to just be able to be a weird and wild kid, like, has had the biggest impact on just how I can relate with other weird and wild people, honestly, is one of the things that is most interesting to me. So, yes, and the permission to create art, the permission to do art as my purpose was always there. I didn't have to fight for through any sort of questions about whether that would be a financially stable thing or anything. I didn't know that it would. I had no idea that it would or could be a financially lucrative career. So it was really just based on.
And what about you, Sarah? I know that you, in terms of your background, I know that Good Girl Jane is incredibly personal to you. It's something that you've drawn on personal experience from. Would you say that having those kind of experiences in the background has allowed you to open up and be a lot more kind of like, I don't know, I'm trying to remember who it was who gave this quote, but sort of like opening a vein and bleeding creativity and that kind of thing? Is that the idea? Is that kind of like what your background has allowed you to do as a director?
Wow.
Sorry for that question.
No, it's just that I don't know what it would be like to have another background.
No.
So
Does it inspire? Having a background that's been difficult like that allow you to, be creative and sort of, I don't know, have no shackles, nothing that's going to stop you from being able to be creative?
I'm like, I mean, do I have no shackles? I aim to have no shackles as an artist. I was also supported to be an artist as a young person. Like, my dad was in the music industry and my mom's a therapist, but they never told me that I had to do a certain thing. That definitely helps. But I think writing and directing Jane was also hugely it was just such a massive learning experience, because it's really hard to write about yourself, and you can write about yourself in a flattering way. That would be lovely and fun and nice. But to really have people look at you and to really look at yourself, so that you can understand human nature better and the world better, and actually generate real intimacy with people and connect with more people. That I guess, the search for that kind of intimacy when I was younger, because I felt so lonely, maybe that's what drew me to this kind of work. I mean, I'm speaking of Joachim, we always talk about how he makes personal filmmaking, and that is, I mean, Jake and I talk about this, it's just the type of work that I'm drawn to, for sure. But yeah, I think being a lonely, sad kid and finding my window into other human connection was really through movies, and I want to be a part of that. I want to like offer what I found there. And it's hard. It's really hard to make work like that, and it's really uncomfortable, and you really have to. I was thinking this while both of you were talking, but I really I was really intentional about the crewing of this film. It took a long time to crew the film because it's just like casting, and it's just like it's the people you surround yourself with in your life. Like I spent 10 years with these people. I spent years with the people on this set, and I genuinely love them. I love this cast. I love it. All the crew came back for the second year of production after the COVID shutdown. I mean, really, we had, I think, 99% retention, and the people that we lost were had moved out of the state or something. So I guess it's really just human connection is
Yeah, I think it's true, though. You're building these teams that you're going to go off and tell a story, and I suppose everybody has to buy into an idea. And as the director, you're the person who's leading that whole thing, right? You're the person who has to kind of convey this idea, especially when it's a personal story like this. You're trying to get everybody on board so that you can sell it as well as possible, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to bring people along on a me journey. I want people to be there if they can bring themselves to it, and then the whole thing benefits. I definitely don't want to make art to navel gaze. I don't, and I don't feel like I feel like when you watch something that is so specific to someone's human experience and personal experience, the more specific and honest they are. I mean, it's like we all have the same feelings. We all carry shame, or we all have pleasure and joy. Like, just get in there with it.
Yeah. It's a profoundly human journey. It's something that, as I said, I'm from Northern England, so I can completely connect with as well. I think it's really good. I'd say this as well in terms of filmmaking. Would you say, I don't want to trivialize it, it's a very good thing to kind of latch onto because it's addictive in itself. You know what I mean? Filmmaking itself is addictive. You know, it's something that you can't get enough of when you're on set. You want to do it more and more, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in terms of conveying, the themes of loneliness, isolation, things like that in this film, how did you approach it, Jay? Was the things that you were looking at, like the shots certainly where you pull back, like I'm thinking about there's a police station scene in the corridor where you pull back and you just show her sitting there on her own. And she, not saying that don't mean this in a nasty way, she seems quite pathetic and quite, like on her own, just completely. You pull way back. The same shot, I suppose, to end the film as well.
I remember that shot specifically was we had tried it as the camera pushing past her, and we kind of met her in a close-up for a moment, and then they walked away, and then I think maybe 3 or 4 takes in, Sarah was like, we just need to play it wide, and it definitely worked better in that regard. I think that portraying the isolation, I think I listened to Rain a lot, who plays Jane. I think I listened to her as far as trying to feel out what the framing was supposed to be, because she occupied that space in such authenticity that I could tell when it needed to be, when it deserved to be really close, and I can tell when it needs to be a little wider. And there's also logistics, obviously, as well, of just like moving through spaces, and
that was something I was going to get onto. I loved it in this film, actually. It's a really cool thing that you do, like the party scene. Sorry, I have to enunciate. The party scene where you're moving through the whole space. We actually experience the whole location. There's extras walking past. People who aren't even...
I loved watching that last night.
Yeah, me too.
It's great because the thing is, you don't know where you're going to land. It's one of these. Well, you do obviously, but we don't know where you're going to land. There's people walking past. When you go to the drug dealer's house, prime example.
Yeah.
People walk through. We actually walk past a drug deal happening to go out into the back garden. It's one of these. You get a real good sense of location because of the handheld and because of this moving through. As I said, I called it voyeuristic before. Was that something that you were aiming for whenever you went into a space?
I think that the space of LA and the space of these interiors and drug dealer house and the meth addict's house towards the end of the film and the motel, I love the exploration of space, and I love when we can kind of connect spaces within a moment in a scene to just kind of get a broader feel of where things are placed. You
catch there's a scene toward the end of the film where Jake catches this little boy rolling around on a bed, at another.
Oh yeah, he's like covered with the little pillow.
At
with
an
his little
older
diaper
woman's
on,
house,
yeah.
and it's like we had talked about so many times just passing rooms and seeing people living their life in those rooms, and
Yeah.
I mean, it's weird you're building a space to feel lived in that is obviously complete artifice, but you know, we don't want it to feel that way. But it's but yeah, Jake and I were really excited about catching little moments, and we actually did that on the short film. We were walking around an apartment building, and we would just sort of like catch actual
Hanover
kids
and
running.
yeah, we
through
had
the
a good luck in
corridors
that situation.
Yeah.
I think there's a good, I mean, Y Tu Mama Tambien is a really big reference for this film. Visually, just the way that Chivo uses movement and intuition, honestly, is what it is, and bold camera choices of drifting away from things that you might assume are important, and focusing on things that maybe aren't as obvious to focus on. And I think that we, with the shots, the environmental shots, really wanted to kind of lean into that kind of drift, drift that he's so known
I think
for
when
and
you
good at.
tag people in there, when you're going through, like, for example, that drug addict house,
Mhm.
when you're going through, when you tag people, it's almost like, you know, you're lifting a lid on Jane's life. You know what I mean? But these people, you could quite easily go into any of those people whatsoever
Yeah.
and tell their story. And that's quite nice when you're going through and you're tagging people, you know? How are you shooting that? What's the lens that you're shooting that on? Because you're going from wides to close-ups and then back. What are you doing with that?
Our lens language kind of developed over the shoot. At first, I think, in the first year of production, there was a moment when I was like, "Oh, it's 32," and then as kind of and that was for like a lot of the home stuff with Andy and Rain, and Eloisa, who plays Jane's sister, where it feels a little bit more condensed and a little bit more claustrophobic. Not that a 32 is a particularly long lens, but as soon as we got into the stuff with all the kids and the stuff that had a more open and airy kind of environmental feeling, we really leaned into wide. I love shooting on wide lenses. I think 25 was our
wide.
I do. I think 25 was our main workhorse for this for most of this film. If not 32 for a lot of the home stuff, but 25 just opened us up, and it's interesting to frame with a 25 because you can get close-ups and they're odd, but there's always this sort of distance and breadth within it. And then definitely we moved on to 18 after that. So, and all the stuff in the car was 18, and just when we really wanted to be able to capture what was happening too, because the more the tighter your lens, the more you're gonna have to pan around, and the wider you are, the more you can kind of just pull back to catch someone out of this corner or out of this corner in the car. That was extremely useful.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
One of the shots that stayed with me was the underwater bit when we're at the party, when they jump into the pool and stuff like that, and you're shooting sort of like half above the water, half under, and then you go down. Is that shot in a normal pool? What's that shot in? Is that on that's on location?
Yeah, that was shot in a normal pool. There's
How are you
some
lighting it
really good BTS photos of
There
that.
is some good BTS photos of that. Yeah, we can maybe pull them up. But it's we didn't have the budget for an underwater like operator. Like, it's shooting underwater it's an art of its own.
Yeah.
And especially just rigging out those cameras, and it's an expensive process.
That was a new scene I'd written too, and I feel like I just slipped it by production, which I
and
wouldn't
it became
do
so
again.
pivotal.
I'm glad
But
it's
I-
in there. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it was, but not on the day, but like it was.
Let's jump in the pool, guys.
No,
Yeah.
not on the day at all. But it was on in the second year of production.
So without the budget for an underwater cinematographer or an underwater operator, we our solution was, so we had a splash bag, which is like basically a water resistant, proof resistant, maybe not pressure resistant casing that goes over the camera. And we had a fish tank. And we had a big, like, I don't know how many gallons, but it was like this big of a fish tank that we found plexiglass online. And I was just like,
so they're like 6 men, like
it's
floating
me and
in
my two grips,
in the
my key grip
pool.
and my best boy grip. They're on either side, just making sure it doesn't tip. Because if water, so basically, the fish tank dips into the water. The camera goes in. The weight of the camera kind of keeps it submerged, but if the water doesn't go over the sides, ideally, so the camera stays dry. But I think that kind of led to that feeling because we had distance between the water line and the lens, so it really created a very distinct line of these two environments of the underwater moment, which I think kind of even feels like a surreal dream. Like even the soundscape, the sound design in that scene is one of my favorite things. Like we go in when the camera dips underwater, the sound kind of
gets muffled.
It gets muffled, and you kind of there's almost a druggy thing, but it's also a very intimate like moment between the two of them because they can't hear anything, but they have this very visual connection. And then coming up above, was also what I love about that scene is there's the refraction of the light through the water causes a dramatically different perspective on the half of the frame that's underwater and the half of the frame that's above
so
water.
You've got like little head, big body.
So they just have these little small heads and these huge swimming like floating bodies, and it was fun to play with. And those guys just
the colors in that scene seem to be so much more vibrant as well. Was that intentional? You went from sort of this muted color palette
definitely, and
that was in camera. Mostly.
A little bit, but James Berry, my gaffer, he just had this intuition to do like a red pink for that scene from just like the get-go. He was just like, this has to be. I was like, all right, let's try it. And I don't know, it worked so well because of the contrast between the water's natural orange glow, and there was a pool light in there that had the blue glow of the water.
Yeah.
There was a pool light in there that had a cooler color temperature as well. And then
I actually hate the color pink, and it's like so triggering to me to see that color in the movie all the time. But at the same time, I see it and I'm like, it looks right.
That's what it
is.
is.
Yeah, it looks right. I let it happen.
Yeah. What was I just gonna say? Sorry. No, it's all good.
Whenever there's any drug scenes, it always feels like when she takes drugs, everything becomes really heightened and a lot more kind of. I've said vibrant before, but very much.
Well, it's also the cutting.
Yeah.
Like there are three sequences in the film where there are montage sequences that are quickly cut, and because you've been living in these like 6-minute shots, there is what is it? There's a scene that's sort of like after Jane has done cocaine, and then the scene is like very choppy and with longer lenses, and then there's a montage in the middle when she's just done meth, and that sequence is edited and feels very different. And then at the end she's got like an opioid kind of, she's like, it's a bit drowsier and a bit more euphoric, like you said, and they're having this intimate experience in the bathtub, and it's in slow motion, and
One of the things about that was, and you're absolutely right, when you're on those long takes, it certainly makes the edits a lot more poignant. Like there's one when she takes cocaine in the bathroom and people are like, I think the line is something like, have you never done it before, or something like this, and then you smash cut to her dancing like some crazy
like,
animal.
What did I do it wrong?
Yeah.
And she's got this incredibly panicked look on her eyes, and Harrison Atkins, the editor, he didn't have that much to play with, but he ended up playing so much, and he's so clever and so he's so smart, but he did some of those like really abrupt cuts mid-word, and I love that about the movie. And you see it from the jump in the first scene.
The first cut.
Yeah, the first cut of the movie is just sort of like mid-word, and you're like, what just happened? Like, was that a mistake? And I like that.
Yeah. Well, there's I hope you don't mind me saying that. There's certainly an experiment. There's an experimental feel. Like you can see that these are filmmakers who are really trying stuff out throughout the film. And like yourselves talking to you now, I really like that. I think it's something new, and it's not something it's not something very predictable. It's really quite nice to see that you're trying different things out with the water scene and things like that. There's another scene I was talking to you guys about before we started recording that was with the sound design. And I know that you experimented with a bit of sound design when you were doing shorts back in college and stuff. And that was with, there's a moment where she does drugs in a church after an AA meeting. And then it sort of goes into this montage, and you use Ave Maria. Yeah. And then sort of like trance music sort of comes in, and it becomes almost like a cacophony, I suppose. Was that, obviously that was intentional, but what was your thought process behind doing that?
Some of that did come from the editor. I don't remember, like, we must have laid something in that was really like operatic.
Yeah.
And Harrison had a vocalist friend that we asked to do Ave Maria. It was really funny because that year, luckily the movie's coming out now, but the year that we did it, like 2 other movies used that track that year, and
Really?
I was like, what's going on?
That
I mean,
man.
obviously the song is everywhere, but
Yeah.
like in an action sequence or something. And so we got really lucky because there was some distance, but also the way that the track is approached is very different. So we did an original recording of the song, and then there's original trance music as well, which when I was younger, I listened to a lot of like very aggressive, like hard style and EDM, and I still do, and and it's nostalgic for me, and also just like it puts you presently into a state of mind that's like pretty like amphetamine-y, and so I just wanted to, and Jake was saying, it's like I wanted to bring people up in the pleasure and the euphoria of it, and like it really does feel like you're like touching heaven when you're like in that state, and then to simulate a come down, which I don't associate that kind of music with a come down, but I think when you're watching that sequence, it's just like the crash of it feels physically abrupt.
Things get strange.
Yeah, things get weird.
A lot of the sound design is really cool, though. You use a lot of diegetic sound throughout it, right? Is that the...
Yes. So I was saying earlier, I worked with this sound designer, Kent Sparling, and I was lucky enough to go to Skywalker for a few... it was truly like a few days we were up there. It was very quick, but there's no real score in the film, which is also, it's like, okay, so I didn't shoot coverage and there's no score. It's like, how is this a movie and how is it not boring? And hopefully it's not. But all the music is diegetic, so all the music is coming from like the radio or a computer or somebody's headphones.
Except for Ave Maria.
Except for Ave Maria.
Yeah, that's the only time it's overwhelms it almost.
Right.
Yeah. And it's juxtaposed as well. Like you have moments where she's on a computer and there's this really hardcore trance music playing and she's very still.
Yeah.
You know, sort of scrolling very slowly. Yeah, it's beautiful.
There were 1 or 2 moments where I mixed it so that, or Kent and I mixed it so that it was a little bit playing with like it would go into like a score space, like when she gets the mixtape from Jamie and plays it, it's playing as if it's off the stereo, and then I sort of like brought it wider and brought it into surround and but yeah, most of it is very much like kind of tinny and sounds like you're listening to it off a
computer.
of a computer, like off MySpace.
One of the things that I wanted to ask about is obviously you had a couple of repeated shots, like the closet shot is the one I'm thinking of the most, where she lays on the ground of the closet and things like that, and that sort of comes about 3 times, I suppose. I think it's earlier on and then in the middle and then one right towards the end with a sister. How did you shoot that to try and bring it in, make it different, or sort of add a little bit of difference to it?
I mean, the closet motif of her sitting in the closet, we shot most of that in the very opening, the first week of production, and we had this. I think we built out a little bit. I think was it a bathroom?
It was a bathroom.
I think it was a bathroom, and we built.
Yeah.
So we had a little luxury of maybe a little extra space, and some. Our production designer Tom Castronovo did a lovely job disguising it to look like a closet with some plywood or some.
Wouldn't know.
The word.
Don't.
MDF.
Drywall.
Drywall.
With some drywall or some MDF. Yeah.
I was like, you're trying. I can't
Why am I
describe the
asking
wood
you?
he used.
So that gave us a little bit of more space to kind of cheat. It didn't feel as tight as maybe a real closet would have, and it kind of became this beautiful, like, cozy room for us to play in. Honestly, those are some of the first scenes that we had. It had to just be like Rain and I in one space together, and I think that was, I don't know, it was a fun time to just kind of hang out
I'm
and
realizing
observe.
right now that I've written quite a few closets, pools, and cars
yeah,
into
that's
everything.
true. And then
I don't know why I
there
wrote so many closets.
was one, and then after the shutdown for COVID, Sarah added another closet scene into the film, and we had already
Classic me.
shot all of our closets at the house with the bathroom closet. So we built another little closet
We
double,
matched a
closet double
Wow.
in the location that was also used for the Red's apartment, which is the drug apartment that they go to at the end of the film. So
the final scene I'll ask you about is about it's you talk about it a little bit in the behind the scenes, and you talk a little bit about this one, but I call it the Children of Men shot, I suppose you'd call it. So this one where you're in the car, again, is that the easy rig coming through the ceiling and through the sunroof? And
yes,
how do you do that?
It's a very similar setup, except so basically the shot is us, 5 kids in a car, a driver, a passenger, and 3 kids in the back. They have to be driving through the streets of LA, and we need to see everybody in the car in a single shot. So there was nowhere for me to be as a camera operator. Yes, it's a very similar thing with the easy rig through the roof, but on this instance, I had to be on the outside of the car because there was nowhere for me to be. So.
Have you seen the image of this? Yes, it's.
I've not seen the behind the scenes. I'm desperate to.
Okay,
but
we had
I've
a-
heard
so we
about
have a-
it,
we
and
had
it
a-
sounds crazy.
It's
we
an
had
epic visual.
the car built up on a process trailer, so they didn't have to drive, which was an important safety concern for everyone, honestly. And then we had a metal truss built around the outside of the car, surrounding it, which was both dropping down an easy rig line. So we basically just clamped an easy rig to the top of a truss and dropped a line down through the sunroof of the car. And that also was attaching a tether for me from the truss to me, who was strapped to the windshield of the car. So I was lying flat out on the windshield of the car with my hands down in through the sunroof, and I had a monitor rigged up ahead of me, so I could operate without
against the car, like
yeah,
the top
yeah.
of the car.
And then I would just hang out there with the guys, and we had the most stripped down camera body that we had, no matte box, external battery with a line running out to the outside. So it was we had several scenes that were just really stripped down, very basic as bare minimum camera package. And then I would just be swiveling around with my arms and watching the monitor and
But just to
hanging
complete
out.
the picture, this is a process trailer on, I want to say, like San Vicente in Santa Monica.
Yeah.
This is a huge thoroughfare with like multiple cops leading. It looked insane. Like it looked like a Michael Bay movie. I mean, to me, because I was just like, this is a tiny movie, and somehow this is such a wild, epic setup, and I have this amazing man like strapped to the top of this car and all of these teens, and it was really
And then there was a lightning storm, right?
and then there was lightning storm. There was a lightning storm, which we were talking about before we sat down, which is insane because I mean, how often is there lightning in LA? Also, why on the day we had like exposed metal and all these like young actors and
driving
Jake
around attached to a lightning
attached to
rod.
a
So
car,
yeah.
So we would have to time the storm. We had to time the shots and the storm and also the light. So it was like our amazing AD would be like, okay, like this weather channel says this and this weather app says this, and we have like 4.5 minutes to go around the block, and it was completely insane. And
because that's not a short. It's not a short scene, that either, is it?
No, it isn't. I mean,
quite
we
long,
only got what, 1 or 2 takes on it, something like that.
Yeah.
we probably got
And then a classic like losing the light situation occurred where the take that we ended up using in the film was like not really daytime anymore.
We didn't even.
How are
we
you
didn't
lighting
know.
that, by the way?
We have there's a lot of tubes in the car, just placed occasionally, but it's a lot of natural stuff too, because especially when you're seeing 360, there's not only so many places you can hide stuff, and we kind of, in general, our approach to high contrast was to let it ride. I mean, like there's a lot of scenes that have bright sun, and when we had nowhere to put any sort of overhead or any sort of diffusion, and there's a lot of relinquishing to just like, okay, this is a bright sunny day, and it's gonna look bright and sunny, and there's gonna be
And
some
then it
hard
will be
shadows,
raining,
and
like,
and
30
then it's
seconds
gonna be
later.
raining. Yeah.
It's a very cool shot. I really enjoy
Thank you.
it. Yeah. So, as my final questions, I suppose. I'm intrigued as to who your influences have been and who your influences are right now as a director, as a cinematographer. I'll come to you first, Sarah. Who have your influences been as a director? Who have you been watching? What are your films that you're into, and that really kind of inspire you to make film?
Easiest answer is Joachim Trier always, because I was introduced to his work in college, and I was like, oh, this is for me. You know, when you see something, you're like, this is for me. You made this for me. So that was easy, and then getting to work with him was that was like an insane miracle. And I'm so excited that people are now getting to see his work so much more.
That's great.
Who else? Andrea Arnold. Growing up,
Fish Tank.
I'm just like everything. Yeah, I adore Andrea Arnold. I'm so excited to see Bird. That is like one of my most anticipated of this year. And Greg Araki, we were talking about earlier. I remember seeing Nowhere when I was in high school, and maybe even younger than that, like maybe even middle school. I don't even know. It was truly like the middle of the night, and I couldn't sleep, and I turned on the TV and it was playing, and I spent a lot of my life trying to track down what that movie had been because it was like such art. It was so pivotal to me, and so many more, but I do love movies. I feel so excited and love that I get to make them.
Yeah, Andrea Arnold and Bird. It was received really well at Cannes, wasn't it? And it's Barry Keoghan, I believe, is going to be in it.
Yeah.
Sounds really
I
good.
mean, it's I can't imagine. And
Fish Tank's amazing. Michael Fassbender in that film, isn't it? That's
I
a
mean, that was
brilliant
a huge reference for this film for sure. Absolutely. I feel like Itama También and Fish Tank were maybe like up there tops of things.
There was definitely a feel
sure.
of Sean Baker as well, kind of like a Red Rocket or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, I know he's a Nora is about to come out. That sounds like a really cool film.
Another
as well.
one that I cannot wait for is that's actually a great point. I think he just feels like, I don't know. I mean, I can't speak to it. I've not met the man, but I feel like he's making movies from a really genuine place of love for people and the characters and the world he's exploring. It's just like it feels like it's coming, I don't know, not the right place, but a really beautiful place. Yeah.
I was amazed that Red Rocket wasn't nominated for more things. It was a fantastic film.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And what about yourself, Jake? What are you watching?
Oh, what am I watching? I mean, I think my my biggest influences, I mean, Alfonso Cuarón as a director. It's just the combination between the grit, the humanness, the intimacy, but also it's just the entertainment. Also, just the fun, and like to be able to make a movie that has so much heart, but also just really like drives forward and has so much life to it. You know, that is just something you want to watch. Yeah,
it is so fun.
Children of Men. I mean, and and then Chivo as well is just like the way they worked. Alfonso Cuarón and Chivo worked together to use the camera and explore space and character and depth and intuitively is just super inspiring to me. Just unique ways of telling stories. I loved Anatomy of the past year, Justine Triet, and just how unusual of a story that in the way they told that, and the intimacy there as well, and the stillness. Ruben Östlund, I love, the strangeness as well, and just and the understanding of the human condition, but also being able to present it in a way that's unique and inspiring and different. Like we all have our own takes on what it is to be.
It like encourages you to look at yourself, but doesn't like, it's not forcing you. It's just sort of like, we're all kind of weird, huh?
We're all kind of weird, and I love your version of weird, you know. And just I think the more access we can have to other people's versions of their own authenticity, the more we can kind of create permissions for us to explore that and find that in ourselves. So
You're absolutely
Yeah.
right. You mentioned Y Tu Mama Tambien, and I love that film. I love the fact that at the end it just says they would never see each other again, or something like
I
that. They
know.
would never meet again. It was
Yeah.
like kind of like hits
Beautiful
you. You go,
tragedy.
it's
Yeah, it's
completely
so-
real.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and you can share that much beauty and that much closeness and that much life together, and it's fleeting.
Yeah.
It's really so you gotta honor it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So guys, you're in LA right now, and you're doing lots of different screenings all over town of Good Girl Jane, which is fantastic. And it's going to be out when? When's it going to be coming out?
October 8th.
October 8th. Amazing.
Yeah.
And what are your handles so that everybody can follow you and sort of say how amazing you are? If you don't have handles, don't worry about it. You know, like
We got
I gotta figure out my social media situation. It's just my name on Instagram. It's my full name, Sarah Elizabeth Mintz. I tend to post primarily about whatever movie I'm making, but yeah, follow me. Absolutely.
And can you talk about anything that you're going to be making in the near future? Because I know that I asked you about it, but I don't know if it's allowed to be allowed out or anything like this. I know that you've got some things coming up.
Yeah, I'm directing another film called The Maid of Orleans. It's being produced by Christina Oh and Stephen Yun, and I do have a really exciting cast, but I can't talk about the cast yet. But I am so excited about them, and we're doing the movie in Paris next year.
Oh, wow. That sounds fantastic. Jake, how about you?
My Instagram is JP JPSaner. If you want to check out my work.
You actually use your Instagram?
I do use my Instagram. yeah. And you can follow
And it's
Good Girl Jane.
beautiful.
Our film is Good Girl Jane film. And yeah, we're gonna be posting a lot. I've been just lucky enough to have a nice burst of commercial work this summer, but also shooting a short in Italy in a few months, and yeah, with a dear friend of mine. So.
And they can find a lot of your commercial work and a lot of your film, your fashion film stuff on your website, right?
Yeah, my website is jakesaner.com. Easy.
Amazing. All right. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. It's been such a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.